Good morning, Calvary family. This is Bart, and instead of a wood word, I thought I'd focus on a yard lesson. Not a hard lesson, a yard lesson. Now, I'm somewhat of a newbie gardener, and I have learned a few things as I have kind of dipped my foot into the water of gardening. And I'm going to talk to you today about a principle that we take away from the natural world, which is also true in our spiritual life. And that principle is what I call the weed plant principle. And it's simply stated this: the more pervasive your plants, the less problematic your weeds. Maybe you want to say it with me. The more pervasive your plants, the less problematic your weeds. Now, if we think of God as our gardener, because he is in fact called that by Jesus in John 15. And if we think of ourselves as God's garden, which Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3, I think we can take away some life-giving and helpful principles for ourselves. The idea of the principle is simply this: that the more that plants dominate and pervade a garden bed, the less problem you're going to have with weeds. Now, this is a pretty well-established garden bed of strawberry plants, and we have enjoyed the fruit of it quite a few times this year already with the ever-bearing berries. Now, on the other hand, this garden bed is a newer one. We have taken transplants because if you know much about strawberries, they like to kind of overreach their bed and then plant themselves into whatever else they can find on the side of it. And so my wife in particular has taken and transplanted plants from one to the other, and so we've gotten a start on a second whole garden bed of strawberries, which I'm very happy about. In the process of doing that, we have a kind of a newbie garden bed and we have a more established one. It's probably no surprise to you to hear that the weeds in the newer bed are a greater problem than they are in the established bed. And the reason is simply this: is there's less room and resources for the weeds to grow in the established bed than there is in the newer bed. What can we take away from this? The first is this: as believers, we should not be discouraged if we are finding that we have to pull weeds. Part of being a gardener is being a weed picker. That's just, if we wanted a weed-free existence, we should have poured a cement patio and not planted a garden. Now, the reality is that while we are part of the process of gardening, God himself is the gardener, and he is not easily discouraged. We often look at ourselves in the mirror and we become obsessed with what we see, and we are frustrated and anxious, disappointed and angry about the lack of our progress and the frequency that we have to pull our weeds. But God is not. He is faithful, he is unfailing, and he is not discouraged or tired. So Philippians 1:6 gives us this promise: he who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it to the day of Jesus Christ. We shouldn't be discouraged, or at least stay discouraged, about the need to pluck weeds in our life. Best idea is simply to get out there, pluck them before they get too big and hard to work with. The second principle is this, and as you can see, it's kind of a warm day, that we should not be overly focused on simply trying to live weed-free. If you know much about gardening, you know that if you don't have plants and all you have is just empty soil, you can be sure that you'll grow one thing, and that's weeds. Weeds just grow. It's part of the deal. But the more that you fill a garden bed with proper plants, and they are nourished well, they are given the nutrients and the water and the sunshine or the shade that they need, the better those plants will do. It's easy as believers to get focused on sin-free living. Worry comes to us and we say, oh, I'm doing it again, I'm worrying again. Selfishness comes up and we just kind of frustrate ourselves, and we look at ourselves in the mirror and we just can't even hardly stand it. We might get greedy, we might get covetous, we might get jealous, we might become bitter, and we just say, what's wrong with me? And well, there's nothing wrong with you. We all are struggling in the same way. But the point is this: don't stay focused simply on the weeds. Grow love in the soul. Let's take worry, for example. If we just focus on don't worry, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry, guess what we're going to do? We're going to be focused on worry. But if we say, oh, here's worry again, let's pluck it, let's nourish a trust-filled life of prayer and cooperation with God. Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and request with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. You see, there's a replacement. You nourish the soul in love and in prayer-filled trust in God. The more that happens and it fills the life, the less trouble we'll have with worry. And on it goes with all the vices. The fruit of the life that God is after is the likeness of Jesus Christ. Remember what he said? I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, it is he who bears much fruit. And of course, what is that fruit? It's the likeness of Jesus Christ. In a word, we could call it love. Paul said in Philippians 1:9, this is my prayer for you, that love may abound in you in knowledge and in all discernment. Let's pursue that so that our life can be filled with that. So, beloved, don't let the enemy get you focused on your sins. Don't let him get you focused on the things that trip you up. Yes, you and I need to deal with them. Yes, we bring them to God. But let's give ourselves to the pursuit of righteousness, peace, and love with those who call on the name of the Lord. Let's let God fill our garden beds with all the things that he wishes to. A life of worship, of gratitude, a life of joy. And guess what? In the end, we'll be dealing with less weeds. Here's the yard lesson in a word: the more pervasive your plants, the less problematic your weeds. I hope it helps. The Lord bless you. Goodbye.